All right. Welcome back to the public hearings of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I am, as always, your friendly chairman, Kumar Barve. I'm joined by my equally friendly, nay, more friendly vice chairman, Dana Stein, and the wonderful members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Now, I'm going to try and make this announcement several times during the public hearings. If you are a witness and your name, and you have signed up as, say, Steve Roberts, we would want for you to have as your name in Zoom, Steve Roberts, so we can recognize that you are there and we can recognize you. If it just says Steve, or if it says iPhone 587, we have no idea who you are, and you might get missed and not have your Marshall McLuhan 15 minutes of fame. So, and everybody's entitled to that in Western civilization, according to Marshall McLuhan. So, in any case, here's the list of the bills and the order in which we are going to go through them. The first bill is going to be House Bill 656, Delegate Charkoudian. Next bill, House Bill 326, Delegate Williams. Third, House Bill 546, Delegate Arentz. After that, House Bill 679, Delegate Stein, followed by House Bill 710, Delegate Lewis, House Bill 726, Delegate Ebersol, and finally wrapping up with House Bill 713, Delegate Lehman. And so I see Delegate Lorg Charkoudian, who has very helpfully put her name in the Zoom chat. So I'm going to recognize her. And Lorg, you've got 4 minutes. Welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, colleagues on the ENT. I'm excited for my 4 minutes, which hopefully will launch me into 15 minutes of fame. And for the record, here asking for a favorable report on House Bill 656. This is a bill that is related to pedestrian and bike safety, and this comes out of a tragic experience that I've had, and I believe many of you probably have also had, which is we identify an area in our community which is on a state road. That area in our community has had accidents. People have either been killed or seriously injured. We walk that area with the State Highway Administration. The State Highway Administration agrees with us that that area needs upgrades, and then we wait. And while we wait for those upgrades to come, another person gets killed. And it is devastating. It is devastating when anyone gets killed on our roadways, but especially when we have identified, worked with the State Highway Administration, determined what's needed, and then to have that death, it is doubly devastating, and it is on all of our consciousness. So what this bill does is a few things that address this. The first thing that it does, when I started talking to the State Highway Administration and saying, why is this? One of the reasons is that several of the funding sources that are designed for these spot improvements that are in the system preservation part of the CTP are always chronically underfunded. And so one of the things my bill does is it requires the State Highway Administration to increase the funding in those areas where those spot improvements, where that money for those spot improvements comes from. The good news on this is that the CTP is about to increase the total budget by 20%, which means we're going to have 20% more money for the entire CTP. And so what this bill will do is, without needing more money from the state or more money from the Transportation Trust Fund, it'll make sure that an appropriate amount of that increased federal funding is going to the places where the money would come from for these improvements. The second thing that I learned over the last 3 years in these engagements with the State Highway Administration is often a place will be identified for improvements. And while it's waiting, there are interim improvements that can be made, but the State Highway Administration does not, as a standard practice, make those improvements unless we ask for them. That seems like a no-brainer. If lower cost interim improvements can be made even while we're waiting for the budget for the larger improvements, then we should be making those improvements. This bill requires that. The third thing that I was shocked to find out is that even though the State Highway Administration has adopted context-driven guidelines that bring into play sort of best practices for roadways depending on the context for pedestrian and bike safety, when they don't always implement them when they're making improvements. So for example, Veers Mill Road was recently resurfaced with federal money. So all the money was coming from the federal government. This is not even in my district, but this was a place that we identified this issue. According to the department's own context-driven guidelines, Viersma Road ought to have narrower lanes. So they spend all of this federal money, resurface the whole road, and don't take the opportunity to implement their own context-driven guidelines that can save lives. When I asked about it, they said, well, those are our guidelines, but sometimes for improvement projects, we don't use them. And so this bill very simply says, on all your projects, improvement or otherwise, use the guidelines that you've established as a best practice. Finally, this bill includes a comprehensive study of areas where there's been pedestrian and bike injuries and deaths. That turns out to be very similar to House Bill 254. I've been working with Delegate Polakovich-Carr. We're going to probably amend that section out of my bill and incorporate it into her bill. And so I can answer questions about the intent if folks have them, but I won't be talking about that today. I will also mention this is a Transit Caucus priority bill, so pleased to announce that. And I have a fantastic panel following me. I'm honored to have them here today. And Mr. Chair, I'll take questions when it's appropriate.
Okay, before I recognize the first two people who are both mayors, I would ask whoever Jerry is, who has Jerry's iPhone, if you could change your name to your first and last name so that we could recognize you when it's your turn to speak on whatever issue it is that you're speaking. And so let me begin by introducing, welcoming back to the committee, the mayor of the excellent city of Rockville, my mayor, Bridget Newton. Welcome, Madam Mayor. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Barve, and thank you, Delegate Charkoudian, for sponsoring this very important legislation. And to both of you, thank you for indulging me today and being at the beginning of the panel. The Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, thank you all for this important legislation, HB 656, and we request a favorable report. We are thankful to Delegate Charkoudian for sponsoring this very important legislation. In July of 2020, the Mayor and Council approved Vision Zero Action Plan as a comprehensive approach to achieving zero fatalities and serious injuries from traffic crashes. The Rockville Vision Zero Action Plan is consistent with the state's Vision Zero subtitle and follows the same implementing philosophy. The city supports HB 656 and its goals to assess the infrastructure and operational practices that limit our collective ability to reach Vision Zero. Rockville continues to proactively track crash locations and coordinates with SHA to identify state-maintained roadways and intersections in need of further assessment. We have identified a high injury network of the roadways which have the most crashes resulting in fatalities or serious injuries. All 6 segments are located along state-maintained roadways with 52 fatalities and serious crashes. Rockville wrote MDOT over 2 months ago to express our serious concerns and request safety improvements. Unfortunately, we have not received a response. While regular collaboration between our transportation agencies is strong when identifying problematic safety locations, current processes and capacity at the state level often extends the timeline for the implementation of safety improvements beyond acceptable levels, including a 90-day timeframe for responding to requests. Moreover, the recommended safety improvements often fall short of the needs of vulnerable people walking, rolling, or bicycling in favor of maintaining the motor vehicle level of service or justification that predates the state's Vision Zero policy. The requirements for a comprehensive safety evaluations, consistency with the Vision Zero program established under Title 8, Subtitle 10 of the Transportation Article, an increased and mandated budget for vulnerable roadway user improvements, and staffing assessment will help expedite proactive and innovative safety improvements along state roadways that are desperately needed. We ask that you incorporate the following amendments into the bill. 1, include implementation of temporary safety measures along with incremental near-term improvements for projects taking more than 12 months to complete. And 2, expand safety recommendations to include improvements designed to reduce unsafe and illegal driving behaviors. In closing, HB 656 is urgently needed and will further advance the state's Vision Zero traffic safety efforts, making a safer transportation network for people walking, rolling, bicycling, driving, and using transit. We urge the committee to provide HB 656 with a favorable report and forward the bill to the House for a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, we're going to recognize Mayor Jacob Day of the City of Salisbury. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Chair Barve and Vice Chair Stein, Delegate Charkoudian, and other members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Thanks so much for having me. I'm always a little nervous when I have to testify in front of Delegate Anderton, my delegate. But What I'll say today is that I'm here to testify in support of the Safe Access for All Roads Act of 2022, and that this will help save lives for Marylanders across our state by improving roadway safety and making our roads safer for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. Serving as mayor of a Vision Zero city, I fully support House Bill 656 as it will increase spending to prioritize the life and safety of our citizens. In Salisbury, we began work on this topic in 2014, and since then adopted a Vision Zero policy in 2018, forming a task force in 2019 to implement changes all over our city that's resulted in more than 100 small improvements that have addressed intersections and sections of roadway where we have seen significant fatalities and injuries. What this does, however, is it paints a stark contrast between the roadways that we control and can influence and the roadways that are owned and controlled by the state of Maryland. And we all want to see the goal of ending serious traffic-related injuries and fatalities in our great state by 2030, but that means everyone's got to play a role in that. So prioritizing public safety, creating safer roads are going to yield dividends, including life safety, but also including dividends on our fight against climate change, as Maryland residents will be encouraged to reduce their carbon footprint by walking or cycling. It just so happens that I'm testifying to you from a group of a gathering of mayors here in South Carolina, all talking about redesigning their streets to protect their citizens in a state where 95% of the roadways are controlled by the state. The inverse may be true in Maryland in our communities, but we can save lives. I'll tell you that in the last 2 years, we saw 6 fatalities on roadways in Salisbury, all of them on state highways, and all of them, I think, avoidable. So I encourage a favorable report, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me proceed to the other witnesses who are signed up. Dr. Aniuna Reed-Jones. Dr. Jones, Dr. Reed-Jones, are you with us? Apparently not. Okay, we'll move on. Leah Walton. Leah, are you with us?
I am, thank you.
Okay, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and Vice Chair and the members of the committee. My name is Leah Walton, and I'm a safety advocate for the National Transportation Safety Board. The NTSB appreciates this opportunity to provide you with information regarding its special investigation reports on pedestrian and bicycle safety, and especially for our call for better data and infrastructure design to ensure safer roads. The conventional approach to road design and road safety is failing road users. The NTSB added protect vulnerable road users through a safe system approach to its 2021-2022 most wanted list of transportation safety improvements as a result of our recent and various studies and investigative reports involving vulnerable road users. We found that through our studies, what was that road design plans developed on the state and local levels that safely incorporate vulnerable road users into the transportation safety network can focus resources to yield the greatest possible reduction in the number of people who are severely or fatally injured in motor vehicle crashes. However, implementation of countermeasures is often hindered by the lack of agency commitment or the lack of policies that actually designate the necessary funding for them. Incorporating safety countermeasures for vulnerable road users into new safety designs will require substantial resources, but will improve safety for all. I hope this information will be valuable to the committee as it considers House Bill 656. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that Dr. Reed-Jones is now with us. Dr. Reed-Jones, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Niana. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, great. My name is Reed-Jones, and I'm founder of Black People Ride Bikes, a advocacy organization here in Baltimore, Maryland. I also...
Well, we're having difficulty hearing you, which probably means you're having difficulty hearing me.
We started Black Bikes with a way to bring back a lane to first and foremost to advocate for safe cycling for everyone hear me?
We're having, you're going in and out. It's very jerky. You don't have a good connection. Do you want to wait a little while, let somebody else testify, and we come back to you? Well, she probably didn't hear me say that.
Hello?
We heard you there. Could you stop the timer or?
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Why don't we go on to somebody else? You find a better location for a connection and we'll come back to you. How's that?
That's fine. Can you hear me any better now?
Yeah, a little better.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
all right.
Go ahead and testify.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
Yeah, we really can't hear you. Let's move on to some other people and we'll try and come back to you. Let's go to Josh Greenberg. Josh?
Suggested a lot of times those communities are the ones that are forgotten when all those things are done. But safe cycling and pedestrian safety is also important throughout the city. So if they benefit, the whole city should benefit from that pedestrian cycling. So I definitely advocate for this bill. I think it's a great opportunity, and I definitely urge.
Okay, let's thank you very much. Let's move on to Josh Greenberg, Trish.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So apologies here. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Josh Greenberg, and I am here to testify on behalf of Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski in support of House Bill 656. As many make the decision to switch to more active, environmentally friendly modes of transportation, it is critical that improvements of public roads accommodate vehicle alternatives. The Federal Highway Administration's Proven Safety Countermeasures Initiative was designed to reduce roadway fatalities by outlining national best practices for the design and construction of roadways, factoring in speed management, roadway departure, intersection design, and accommodations for pedestrians and bicyclists. Additionally, the State Highway Administration's context-driven guide provides a foundation for road construction which promotes safe, multimodal access to roads across the state. Last year, Baltimore County prioritized legislation which imposed stricter penalties on violations that led to the injury or death of vulnerable road users. The county recognizes that vehicle alternatives provide numerous benefits for the health of residents and the environment at large, and understands that these shifts in public behavior must be reflected in state roadway construction projects and improvements. By requiring the Maryland Department of Transportation to adopt guidelines put forward by the state and federal highway administrations, House Bill 656 furthers the county's efforts to encourage healthier forms of transportation and ensures the safety of individuals who opt to walk or bike along state roadways. Accordingly, Baltimore County urges a favorable report on House Bill 656. I'd like to thank Delegate Charkoudian for bringing this bill forward, and thank you to the committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you. Next, we'll turn to Miriam Schoenbaum with Action Committee for Transit. Miriam, are you with us? And if you are, welcome, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Miriam Schoenbaum. Thank you, and hello to my 2 District 15 delegates. On behalf of the Action Committee for Transit, I ask for a favorable recommendation for this bill. This bill would require SHA to make their roads less dangerous for pedestrians, bicyclists, bus riders, and other vulnerable road users. And it would provide the funding for this. SHA should support it. For years, we have asked SHA to make meaningful changes to prevent pedestrian and bicyclist injuries and deaths. Unfortunately, in most cases, SHA says no. And even when they say yes, they still don't make the changes. Meanwhile, every day, people are using the dangerous roads SHA is responsible for. In my written testimony, I've included some examples of requests where SHA said yes, but they still haven't done anything. Or they said yes, but not now. Or they should have included it in their project design from the get-go, but they didn't. So I will just use the rest of my time to list some of the actual reasons SHA has provided for why they won't, can't, or shouldn't make a road crossing safe for pedestrians. Because it's dangerous to cross there, because not enough people cross there, because then more people would cross there, because then people would think it's safe to cross there, because people can cross somewhere else, because nobody has been hit there yet, because nobody has been killed there yet, because typically drivers don't hit people there, because it already is safe if drivers are law-abiding, because it's too complicated, because drivers would have to wait too long, because the speed limit is too high, because engineering standards don't allow them to, because they have to do another study, because they're waiting for a different plan. This has to stop. We need the Safe Roads Act of 2022 as SHA's job to provide roads that are safe for everyone.
Thank you very much. Let's turn now to Joshua Feldmark of Bike Maryland. Joshua, welcome back to the committee. You got 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Barbe. Thank you, rest of the committee and interlopers from another committee. I am here representing.
They're not interlopers. They're welcome guests.
Fair enough. Welcomed guests from the other committee. I represent Bike Maryland, and I should also say that I'm here on behalf of a coalition of bicycle organizations across the state, including Bike More, WABA, Bike AAA, Bike Frederick, Bike Hartford, and actually more and more we represent pedestrians, and I think, of course, all of us at some time or another are pedestrians, and I think that's relevant here because this bill is as much, or if not more, about the safety of pedestrians than it is even about cyclists. You know, 2 weeks ago, I was here in front of this committee testifying on the Vision Zero Implementation Act after heaping praise upon this committee for your years of leadership, which I meant wholeheartedly, and certainly I'm not bringing it up again just to remind you how much I love this committee, but that I bring it up because this bill is a perfect companion to the Vision Zero Implementation Act in implementing this next step. We talk a lot about Vision Zero. You had the foresight in 2019 to implement Vision Zero, but this is how we get to the next step. And you've heard all of the different pieces of what this does. I will just highlight one that I think is really, really important, and that's this idea of incentivizing near-term incremental improvements. You know, we get these sort of big projects that will fix intersections or particular spots, and then we wait in the queue to get them done. And in the meantime, let's do these small things. And then finally, I will just say that that we've seen the fiscal note. We're not naive. We understand that's huge, but we'll say that similar to if you kick the can down the road on fixing a bridge, if you would have just fixed it at the time, it might have been $1 million. 10 years down the line, it's going to be $100 million. This is the same thing. We've been kicking this can down the road for years, and if we keep doing it, that number's just going to get bigger. So with that, I urge a favorable report.
Okay, we do have a question from Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I actually have a question for Ms. Schoenbaum, who offered what I think was the best summary of the last 12 years of my life on the county council, working on transit issues. And I don't see that in your testimony, but that list of excuses was an amazing summary of my time. So I was just wondering if you could share that with us as well, because I have heard every one of those, and I'm looking also at your testimony, which is wonderful. but if you could share that with us as well, that was great. Thank you.
Sure, I can send it to Delegate Charkoudian.
I'm sorry?
I will send it to Delegate Charkoudian.
And I'm sure she'll share it with the committee. Thank you.
I'll do that.
I have a question, and this actually struck me when I heard those list of excuses. Has anyone ever proposed the idea of, at an unsafe intersection, having SHA put up a sign saying that this is X number of people have been struck at this intersection, please be careful, just to let people know that this is a place where they should be super careful? Has anybody ever thought of doing that? I'm curious. Apparently not. Okay, well, now we're thinking about it. All right, well, that ends the public hearing on that bill. Thank you so much to everyone who testified. We will now turn to House Bill 320, I believe, yes, 326, Delegate Williams. Delegate Williams,
Yes.
Welcome to the committee. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, wow, a whole 4 minutes. Thank you so much, Chair Barve, Vice Chair Stein, and the members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Delegate Nicole Williams, here to testify in favor of House Bill 326, also known as the State Finance Prohibited Appropriations for a Magnetic Levitation Transportation System. For those who were here last year, you know that this bill aims to ensure that state tax funds and taxpayer money do not go towards the construction of a magnetic levitation transportation system device here in our state. Over the past 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a considerable impact on how we allocate funds in our state budget. And at the time, we're dealing with a multitude of crises that warrant state intervention. The appropriation of funds towards this project is opposed by a number of residents in multiple districts. The parties that would be responsible for the financing and construction of the maglev train have stated previously that there isn't a need to rely on state funding. And by passing this legislation, we can hold them to that promise. State funds would then be able to go towards other priorities, such as bolstering our education system, helping our working families that are still reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the goal of this legislation is just simply to ensure that hardworking Marylanders do not end up footing the bill for a project that has had such vocal opposition from members of our communities and just is not quite ready for prime time to really address significant reduction in greenhouse emissions up and down the I-95 corridor. And so for these reasons, I urge the committee to give a favorable report to House Bill 326.
Very well, then. Let's listen next to Susan Mccutchen. Ms. Mccutchen, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barve. I'm glad to be back. You don't remember me from last year, but thank you so much. And
you look vaguely familiar.
Oh, do
Yes, you do.
Thank you. To the environment, and I hope that's a good thing.
No,
Environment
it's always a positive thing.
and Transportation Committee. My name is Susan Mccutchen, and I am speaking today in support of House Bill 326, as I did last year. I thank our excellent Delegate Williams et al. For sponsoring this again. It is very important that that BWRR, I believe, is prohibited from appropriating funds from the state, except for, as indicated in the bill, the salaries of personnel, assigned to review permits or other forms of approval for such a system, which was about to what was one of the comments from, I believe, from a couple of years ago, that that would mean then, of course, that nobody could work on it at the state level. So, which of course is reasonable. My concern is that the possible construction of the maglev transportation system is very similar to me, the course of it, for work stoppage and cost overrun, similar to the Purple Line, as well as the California bullet train project. As we see all those projects, the construction, financial woes, the contractors, all sorts of different things that happen with these construction projects. And with California, they're including significant delays in paying property owners from whom they purchased land, and those people are in dire straits. The SC Maglev project will face financial difficulties because the projected costs will increase exponentially. And further, the Japanese government is going to invest, has pledged to invest in the project, and that partnership will require recompense should the project run over. There's an objection from BWRR and Northeast Maglev that they don't need the funds. They're not going to ask for the funds, but they want to have it open, just like they want to do with the infrastructure bill. If they don't need the funds, why provide them? Thank you so much for allowing me to testify today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And are there any questions for the sponsor or the witness in favor? Okay, I don't see any, so we will proceed to the one opponent who has signed up. No, excuse me, there are a couple of opponents. The first opponent signed up to testify against the bill is Mr. Wayne Rogers. Mr. Rogers, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you much, Chair Barve, members of the committee. I'm Wayne Rogers, the CEO of Baltimore Washington Rapid Rail, and I'm glad to appear here today in opposition to HB 326. BWRR is 100% U.S.-owned railroad franchised by the Maryland Public Service Commission to provide service between Washington, D.C., BWI, and Baltimore. When it's completed, it'd be a 15-minute trip between D.C. and Baltimore. 70% of the proposed projects is in tunnel. There's not a single residence taken between Washington and Baltimore. And the franchise itself was granted after hearings, witnesses, contested cases, and the PSC found, and I'll quote, the construction and operation of the SC Maglev between Baltimore and Washington will result in substantial economic and social benefits to Baltimore and the state of Maryland, and will be consistent with the state's environmental laws and policies to reduce harmful emissions for cleaner air, address the causes of climate change, and awarding a franchise to facilitate the development is in the public convenience and necessity. The project's been under review by 30 federal, state, and local agencies for the last 5 years. Very time-consuming, very detailed process, and appropriately so. Draft environmental impact statement was put out in January of 2021. 6 public hearings were held during the day, during the evening, during weekends. Public comment was complete. So the FRA is now considering their next steps. No state appropriations have been requested for this project. Prohibiting appropriations that haven't even been requested will really send the signal that Maryland is not interested in novel solutions to its significant problems of transportation and economic opportunity, climate change, or diversity, equity, inclusion. Maryland won a national competition to host this project, beating out 14 states.
Wayne, if you could start to wrap up, the committee would appreciate it.
Okay, the private sector has invested more than $100 million, and this bill sends the wrong signal and should receive an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, let's turn to Bernice Tucker. Bernice, welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee. You have 2 minutes. Are you with us, Bernice? Apparently not. So we'll move on.
She is there. She's on mute.
Oh, okay. All right.
Bernice, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay. All right.
There we go.
All right. I was waiting for you to do it. Okay. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I do oppose this bill. I feel that it would make the Northwest Maglev, I'm in for making it a reality. My research shows the magnetic levitation transportation system would provide many jobs in construction and permanent positions after completion. Because of its construction, provides safer operations, which is a huge consideration, would be more cost efficient than the traditional trains and environmentally safer. The new train, the proposed maglev trains are less expensive to operate and maintain because of the absence of rolling friction, means that the parts on the vehicle would not have to be replaced as often. Fewer materials are consumed by the train's operations. The design of the maglev cars and railways make derailment highly unlikely, and maglev rail trains can be built wider than conventional rail cars, offering more options for using the interior space and making them more comfortable to ride in, and would also give us more room in case of another COVID outbreak. Maglevs produce little or no air pollution during operations because no fuel is being used. The absence of friction makes the trains very quiet, both inside and outside. They provide a very smooth ride for passengers. But I'm getting confused. For passengers, maglev systems can operate on higher ascending grades up to 10% more than traditional railroads. House Bill 326 is a needless bill that would block investments in these opportunities. Should the people of Maryland choose to invest in this project, I oppose House Bill 326 because the company driving this project forward has committed to asking for no state appropriations and have never received any. House Bill 326. If you could
begin to wrap up, the committee would appreciate it.
Okay. House Bill 326 signals that we aren't even open to the possibility of investing in new opportunities. In turn, it signals we Marylanders do not believe a financially successful future for citizens in our state are worthy of technological progress. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And let's turn next to Michael Sakata with the MTBMA and start out by telling us what that acronym stands for.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
He's not in the meeting.
Not in the meeting. Okay, we'll maybe come back to him later. How about Jerry McLaurin? Jerry, you with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Chair and the committee. My name is Jerry McLaurin. I'm the president of the PFC Black Chamber of Commerce here in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I'm ready to outline our strong opposition to HB 326. Even as one of the newest Black Chamber of Commerce in Maryland and in the Washington metropolitan region, we have earned a well-deserved reputation as a voice for growth in Prince George's County. Through our aggressive pursuit of a healthy economic climate for businesses and an improved quality of life for county residents, our mission is to advance the interests of business and help create wealth for a vibrant Prince George's County. This proposed legislation serves to stand against our core goals and against our mission. This legislation only serves to send a message to the world that Maryland does not want to be part of a future where we finally began to move beyond consistently building and expanding highways. Maglev technology represents a future with less population, traffic, and with an emphasis on clean, efficient, and equitable transportation and transit-oriented development. We believe that Prince George's County and the state of Maryland should be a part of this future. This bill is an attempt to needlessly block a potential for growth and opportunity for so many. And we ask that you submit an unfavorable report. We recommend that the Maryland General Assembly not set a precedent by using legislation on behalf of a few to unfairly limit a potential good for many. And I am the president of PFC Black Chamber of Commerce here in Prince George's County. We represent over 700 Black businesses along the path of this maglev. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's next turn to Stacy Smith. Stacy, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, terrific. You can hear you. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee. My name is Dr. Stacy Smith. I am the lead strategist for the Ministers Conference Empowerment Center CDC, and we strongly oppose this bill, primarily because this bill will offer educational, job, and upward mobility opportunities for the communities that we serve, which is mostly marginalized and those who are underserved by our current agencies and overwhelmed associations in our city and in Maryland. We look at this bill as an impeder, a technical impeder, although Maglev has stated that it will not request state dollars. This bill could still serve as an impeder for that type of technology to come to Maryland. Again, a technology that our communities desperately need in order to gain upward mobility from their current situations. I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I strongly urge you to give an unfavorable report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Thurman Jones. Mr. Jones, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the House Appropriation, Environment, and Transportation Committee. As the president of the Patriots Technology Training Center, I am writing to express our organization's strong opposition of HB 326. For 25 years, Patriots' mission has been empowering students through technology. Our goal is to increase the number of 5th to 12th grade students entering into the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, which is STEM, ultimately leading to a college education and a career path of these fields. Our various programs, camps, workshops, competition, conferences, and other activities serve to introduce youth to tomorrow's careers. The Northeast Maglev Project represents the pinnacle of opportunity for today's youth. The influx of high-tech constructions and operation job with stations located in Baltimore, DC, and BWI will provide tremendous opportunity for our youth. Opportunity to be part of this most advanced transportation system in the world. Once the project is completed, today's youth will continue to benefit with easy access to opportunity along the Northeast Corridor. We also recognize that the project like this will benefit business and people beyond the Baltimore-Washington region. It represents jobs, business, and development opportunity and community growth for millions along the Northeast Corridor. This project represents a future with less pollution, traffic, and with an emphasis on clean, effective transportation and transit development. For the youth we serve, we want to be part of this future. HB 326 is a clear attempt to start this project and, in effect, stifle opportunity for today's youth and for future generations for careers, economic development, access, and a clean environment. Please submit an unfavorable report on this bill, and I want to thank Mr. Chairman and the members of the Transportation Committee for giving me an opportunity to voice my opinion, as well as the many members of the students that I've served for the last 25 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's now turn to somebody representing Northeast Maglev. I don't know if that's Kendrick Tillman or who, is there somebody by that name with us?
Yes, I'm here. Kendrick Tillman.
Okay.
I'm Kendrick Tillman of the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to speak on one. I'm an electrical engineer. My background is in engineering. 20 years ago, we talked about maglev trains. And so we knew that this is the future of technology. And I just see that our state should be in support of something great to get our constituents to a DC partner and opportunities 15 minutes away that will add to our tax revenue. And also, as the president of the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, with their commitment of their diversity and equity inclusion plan, we see that there's opportunities for our constituents to really be involved in this operation, which is coming to our state. And so with this bill, it basically sets a brand that you're not supporting it, where they already committed that they won't need funds from the state. And so just this bill alone is just saying that, well, we're not all in, when I feel like our state should be a part of the future. Our state should be a part of the movement of technology. And I strongly ask for you to vote unfavorable for House Bill 3, for this House bill.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if Michael Sakata has entered the waiting room yet. Trish? Well, I guess Michael Sakata.
No, I did let someone that didn't have a name in, but I don't know. So if you called Michael Sakata.
Yeah, I called his name a couple times, so I'm going to assume he's not here. And we do have a couple of questions. So let me first recognize Delegate Ampry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Williams, for bringing this bill forward. I wanted to, my question is more so for Mr. Rogers, and I guess for anyone who has mentioned the opportunity that is presented with Maglev of a 15-minute commute between Baltimore and DC. And I'm just trying to understand with the Maglev, that 15-minute commute, that train ride, how much would that, what's the expected cost of that? And is it realistic for DC, Baltimore commuters to be using the Maglev at that cost? And then will there be any stops in between Baltimore and DC? Because I hear so much about the things and opportunities that are going to be presented, but based on my understanding, the cost will be prohibitive and there won't be as many stops in between to create economic opportunities outside of the actual train itself. So just wanted to get some more insight on that, Mr. Rogers.
Okay. I'd really answer it this way. We see this project as not just a train, but really addressing 4 major problems that I see the state of Maryland has. Number 1 is a transportation problem. Between DC and Baltimore, we have 121 million car trips a year. That's causing tremendous stress throughout the state on roads, on everything. When we speak of Mark doesn't represent carrying 1% of those people. And if you look at our road system, 295 is probably a good example. 1954, 295 was built. It was built to have a maximum of 50,000 cars per year. It's currently carrying 120,000 cars per year, 2.5 times its maximum capacity. At the same time, there's over 500 accidents on 295 every year, one every day. And in 1 in 4 accidents, those people are sent to the hospital. So we're talking about, in a safety position, 1 in 4 people are going to have to do it. You have people that have to pay money for the car crashes. And you also have 6 fatalities every year just on 295. And now let's look at the commuters you're talking about. The average commuter, DC to Baltimore, is spending 102 hours extra time stuck in traffic. And the Maglev is like adding 8 lanes of traffic, 8 lanes onto 295, which we all know would not be possible. The second issue is an economic problem. If you compare Baltimore and Washington, DC, salaries in Washington, DC are 41% higher than they are in Baltimore City. And really, why is that? Transportation is a huge part of that. Salaries in Baltimore City are 1/3 of what the state average is. What does the Maglev bring? Third point with that is population. Because of this situation of salaries, of economic opportunity, you have cities like Baltimore, that was the leader in our state, losing population. You have the population of Baltimore City is 40% today of what it was in 1950. So, and that's not including where the state of Maryland's population's gone in the last 60 years. The Maglev will bring 161,000 job years. You've heard the other people talk about that in terms of jobs, $6.5 billion into GDP. So access to new jobs, access to economic opportunity, stations, maintenance, all types of jobs and opportunity. Third is the environmental problem. 41% of the air pollution in Prince George's County is coming from automobiles. So if we don't do something significant to get automobiles off the road, we're never going to fight our climate change issue. This Maglev is projected to remove 16 million cars. So not every commuter, to answer your question, not every commuter is going to be commuting every day, commuting from Baltimore here. Maybe 24 million people land at BWI going to Washington or Baltimore. What we're talking about is a big picture issue of how do we reduce millions of cars off, which then moves it for all different people. You know, we are not going to make any major strides of climate change until we address what we're doing about cars and doing it in a major way. And the fourth is the equity problem we've talked about. We have jobs in the state of Maryland, but it's not evenly distributed. Maglev, as I said before, is a groundbreaking DEI plan where 40% of the jobs are going to go to women and people of color. We're working uniquely with the unions essentially to create opportunities, and with places like the Patriot Center so that children can move into this. So when we say how much is it going to cost, and we focus just on what's a ticket cost on this, and is that the yes or no of whether we should look at whether we should improve our transportation, I would say that's not really what the total focus is going to be. Our focus is really this big picture of how do we solve these 3 or 4 major problems and do it. What the actual ticket cost is going to be is going to depend on the volume of ridership. I can tell you in Japan, when they built their train, they built high-speed rail 57 years ago. 1964, Tokyo figured out if we don't have Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, we're going to be choking in traffic. And the ticket price for the high-speed rail in Japan has not been raised in 25 years. Why? Because more and more people ride it every year. So it's not so easy to say, what is a ticket price? It's going to depend on the final cost. It's going to depend on whether groups consistently fight this to try to drive the cost up, which hurts everyone. By delaying the project, by doing these type things, that all is not free. That drives the cost up. By what's the financing package going to look like? What can we do to reduce the cost? It's in our interest, reduce the cost for everybody. But this won't be the savior of every commuter everywhere. This is going to be another, albeit huge, arrow in our arsenal of how we're going to solve these problems.
I understand what you're saying, and you gave a great pitch for Maglev, but my question is more pointed towards, we continue to hear it pitched as an opportunity for there to be a tighter connection between Baltimore and DC. What I'm trying to understand is it based on the numbers I've previously seen on how much the tickets cost, north of $150 each way or north of $120 each way, I don't see it as a feasible way for there to be a natural way people would normally use that for commuting. I'm trying to understand. If you're pitching it as only 15 minutes between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, is the goal of this train not to be a commuter rail? Is that what you're saying then?
No, I'm not saying that. First, let's get disabuse the $150 one way. That's totally wrong. Our planning showed somewhere $40 each way. That's an all-in ticket price, and you could have time of use, time of day, all of those things. I'd point if you say a MARC ticket, for example. We say, let's look at what a MARC ticket is. And members of this committee are well aware of the fact that 2/3 of a cost of a MARC ticket is paid by all the taxpayers in Maryland. So the delegates from the Eastern Shore, their constituents are paying for a MARC ticket that none of their people ride. So I think it's an unfair comparison to say, oh, let's look, it might be more expensive than MARC. I mean, we know it's going to be tremendously less expensive than people that land at BWI and have to take an Uber or a Lyft. There's people that would come for meetings back and forth to do it. There's going to be employers. What is the difference? 24% vacancy rate in Baltimore City for office buildings. Employers could locate office buildings that are work in DC in Baltimore City, and they could subsidize and pay for the tickets for all their employees on that. So it's a much more complicated question than just saying, it's $40 or it's $45, but that's the range we're talking about. Let's say $40, something like that. And that's before you work with everyone to see what we can do to try to get these prices down.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Next question goes to Delegate Lehman. Mary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My picture and the mute button bounced around for a minute. Thank you, and thank you, Delegate Williams, for bringing this bill. Before I ask my question, Mr. Rogers, I just want to say that, to the folks on here, opponents who are shocked that a legislator would say state money cannot be spent on something is kind of naive. I mean, regularly individuals in this legislature and in fact, entire delegations will put forward legislation to prevent state monies from being used for some program or project that they don't particularly care for. So that is not unusual at all. But Mr. Rogers, my question to you, and we have had this conversation over many years dating back to my first years on the Prince George's County Council. I'm not clear whether you and the opponents are trying to argue that you've never gotten money from the state in the past and therefore you cannot be expected or you should not be expected to be asking for money in the future. Is that the case? Because if it is, why would you be opposed to this bill? You seem to be sending kind of mixed messages.
I don't think it's a mixed message at all, Delegate. If we were, for example, to say preemptively, the state shall not fund or take any activities whatsoever with respect to green energy or climate change. Do you think that people would naturally infer that Maryland is against green energy and climate change?
I am not asking about clean energy, Mr. Rogers. I'm asking about maglev.
Delegate, I think he's responding, but you can, have a follow-up question.
I'm asking about maglev.
You were responding to, I'm responding to your question I thought you asked. Is there a problem with preemptively saying, yeah, thou shalt not utilize any state money to it? And I was saying affirmatively there is, and I was using the green energy as an example of that. If you just said that about green energy or that about climate change or state money should never be used for making the roads safe that we just talked about in the previous bill, I think the signal would be that Maryland is against that. And that's directly counter to people in your county. Matter of fact, 2/3 of your county support it. You probably got almost 400 emails against this mail from constituents. So what you're representing here with this bill is a way to try to stop this that represents a vocal minority and doesn't represent what the people of Maryland believe.
Well,
Mr. Rogers,
Mr. Rogers, hold on, Mary. Mr. Rogers, I don't think you can presume to know what the motivation of Delegate Lehman is. But so just keep that in mind as you're answering questions. Delegate Lehman, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I would like to, because Mr. Rogers did not, I think, answer my question. And I respectfully do not need you to throw the kitchen sink at me with your answer like you did to Delegate Ampry. I am asking you if your argument, not going forward, but are you saying because you've never gotten money in the past? Because I'm asking that because I believe you actually have gotten some state money in the past, but I don't think that argument makes any sense in any case.
I'm not aware of any state money that's been provided to the project in the past. And no, our position is no state money has been given to us that I know of in the past. And no, that's not the motivation going forward. Our business plan, as we've always said, does not rely on state appropriations for the project to go forward. What we're saying in this bill, that preemptively doing that is sending the wrong message to everyone involved in the project that this is not a project that Maryland wants, and that's why we oppose it.
Well, I believe that you have gotten technical assistance and money through the Maryland Department of Transportation going back many years for feasibility and other studies. What that amounts to, I don't know, but that is my understanding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next question goes to Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question actually was similar to Delegate Lehman's, but I'll just sort of follow up a bit. I've heard a lot of testimony about from people who support this project and think it would be good for the community. And I know, there's disagreement within the community about the benefits versus the issues with this project, but that's not what this bill is about. This bill is just saying the taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for a private project. And so I guess, similar to Delegate Lehman, but just shifting it a little, I hear you say that it sends a signal, but I don't see that at all. As the General Assembly, we don't have the ability to appropriate money. That's the governor. And so, for us to say, preemptively that we don't want to see money appropriated for it doesn't say anything pro or con about what we feel about the project. And so I guess I'm just, if you are not expecting any state money, how is it a problem for us to be able to say we don't think the taxpayers should pay for it?
I guess my position is what we said before, is that the signal that it sends is that this is not something that Maryland wants. And clearly, we've not asked for any funding. If the governor were to put some funding in it, certainly the legislature can do what the legislature wants to do at that point if it was in the budget. But the reality is we haven't asked for anything here. We don't anticipate asking anything here. And what message would that be to the federal government, to other people along the line that said, we don't want anything, we don't want it to have anything to do with this project when we have those problems that I outlined for Maryland that are significant. And this brings private sector investment and everything to do those problems. And instead of getting help for that, the response is this bill. So, I mean, that's the reason why we're against it, not because we're requesting money, which we are not.
All right, thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate Healy. And
yeah, I'm just getting myself unmuted. Thank you very
Okay.
much. My question is, if you are aware that some 20 years ago, this was also studied, the whole issue of maglev trains. And even at that time, when and I served on that work group, the recommendation was that no state money be spent on it. And at that time, you know, there was an excitement about the technology, and we wanted to wait and see what if the federal government would pay for the whole thing, and maybe that would be a good thing. So now your project came along much more recently, so I'm not sure you're aware of that, but this has been consistent position in the state that no state money should be paid for magnetic levitation. Did you know that?
Yes, I was well familiar with it. As a matter of fact, the result of that is that it was interpreted by the Attorney General that state employees can't even work on it. That prohibited them from filing for additional federal funds. And the entire project went down the drain because what was done with the legislature putting in that no state money shall be used for it. That was the result of it. So I'm well aware of the history, and that's why I'm here today against this, even though we're not asking for state money. That is the history of what happened the last time the legislature did this.
All right, well, but the legislature at that time was not in opposition to the maglev itself, but only in spending state money at the time.
Well, that was interpreted in two ways. It was interpreted that since no appropriations could be utilized for it, at the time it was interpreted that since people's salaries and all the salaries of everyone are related to appropriations in the budget, it was interpreted by the Attorney General. That means that no state employees can work on it. You can't answer the mail. You can't process permits. You can't do anything with that. So that was the interpretation. And from the federal government standpoint, their interpretation is Maryland has closed the door on this and is not interested in proceeding. And maybe we should go to one of the other states and provide the funding to another state. And it was Pittsburgh and Atlanta, Chattanooga. So two other states were funded and Maryland was cut out completely. That was the result.
All right, I don't recall it the same way, but thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask a question, and I'm not looking for signals or dog whistles or any of that kind of thing. I'm just trying to ask you a business model question, okay?
Yes.
Pretty straightforward. Like I tell folks all the time, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That's all I'm looking for. Can you build the maglev from Baltimore to DC without state funds?
Yes.
Like my mom says, period, dot.
Yes, period.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Rogers. This Washington to Baltimore part of the train line, the ultimate plan that you have is to go all the way up to New York eventually, correct?
Correct. That's the idea, to connect city centers and airports up the Northeast corridor. So what we'd have, if you're sitting in Baltimore, you would, within under 45 minutes, connect to every airport and city between Washington, D.C. and New York. So someone today in Baltimore could work in New York City and commute home faster than being able to go get in their car and drive to Washington now.
Okay. Any further questions for any further questions for any of the witnesses who are against the bill? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 326. Let's proceed to House Bill 546. Delegate Ahrens.
Thank you, Chairman Barbee and members of the ENT. It's a pleasure to be in front of you this year. Would love to be in person, but that's not happening. Today, for the record, this is Delegate Steve Ahrens, District 36. I have a House Bill 546. Last year, we presented this bill, House Bill 1117, and it made it through your committee, and we appreciate that. The bill is entitled Pedestrians, Ken Island Drawbridge, Fishing Prohibition, and it's for the purpose of prohibiting a pedestrian from catching or attempting to catch a fish by any means on or under the Maryland Route 18 Ken Island Drawbridge over the Kent Narrows in Queen Anne's County, and generally relating to catching fish on or under the Maryland Route 18 Ken Island Drawbridge over the Kent Narrows. I have letters of support from the delegation, letters of support from Queen Anne's County commissioners, and also I received a letter of support today from the Kent Island Development Foundation. Just a quick note on this bridge. It's in the Kent Narrows. It's a highly populated area. That's a major business section for us. That's where we predominantly have a lot of our restaurants, what have you, for the county. And what's happening over there is the state right-of-way is being violated by people fishing off this bridge. And if you've ever had a boat and run through there is a major current going through there. And with fishing lines hanging down, it's become very hazardous for boaters. And, it's not uncommon to find somebody get a hook in their boat and be riding while they're riding through it. The other issue is if you ever walked under any type of bridge like this, you'll find that there's some dangerous sections there. And we have a problem with people going down there and fishing off of these walls and what have you. We're asking for a favorable recommendation on it. I think one of the other issues, we'd also allow a maximum fine of $500, and that's under the standard statutory penalty for violations. And it is state highway property that's posted. I have with me Commissioner Jim Moran from Queen Anne's County, and I believe he would be my panel, if you will, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Thank you very much, Delegate. Mr. Moran, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify for House Bill 546. Just like Delegate Orange just explained, the Kent Narrows Drawbridge is one lane in each direction. It is a drawbridge. It's already marked by the state for no fishing, but there's no teeth to the signs. What this does, it allows our Sheriff's Department to enforce those fines and keep the fisherwomen out from underneath the bridge and on top of the bridge. The current there is extremely fast and extremely swift, dumping water from either the Chop Tank River into Eastern Bay or vice versa. And what happens is the fishermen would go up underneath the bridge and cast their lines out. They bring their whole families, and it's a very steep slope. Not only is there a very steep slope, it's very quick water, and we've had a couple incidents where people have fallen in, and it could be challenging to get them out of there. So there's a fishing pier directly next to it, literally within 100 yards, and that's where we try to get most of the individuals to fish there, but they want to get up underneath the bridge thinking it's a better advantage, or on top of the bridge, and it's just an unsafe situation for years that we've been trying to rectify, and we're hoping this bill will take care of that.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to recognize the one opponent, and then I'll entertain questions for everyone who testified for and against. So let's go to William Love. Mr. Love, are you with us? Is William Love with us? Okay, if he's not here, we'll just go to questions. The first question goes to Delegate Jay Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Arndt, and you mentioned in the beginning of your testimony that it passed out of the committee last year, got over to the Senate, and then what happened to it?
It vanished. We had a hearing and it just didn't make it through the pandemic.
What committee? Well, we can look that up.
Yeah.
If you don't remember.
I think it was EHE, but I think it got caught up in that log jam.
And to be honest with you, Delegate, when I went over there, it seemed like everything was going. It was a great hearing. No real questions, and the bill pretty much I thought it was going to make it through. It just got caught up, I think, in the chaos with the pandemic.
All right, thanks. That was my point. I just wanted to make a point. It got caught up with a lot of other bills over there last year. We're trying to make corrective actions to that.
Thank
you. Commissioner Moran, you did touch on my question was going to be how many people have fallen overboard there, because the current runs through there probably about 4 to 6 knots, something like that. It's very dangerous. I mean, it's virtually impossible to swim against the tide. I can tell you. How many people have fallen overboard there that have had to be rescued?
I only know of 2, but I have not asked our emergency services or our sheriff's department, but I know of 2.
But it's dangerous.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you have to go with the tide until somebody picks you up.
Right. Well, I mean, Eastern Bay and Choptank River, 2 huge bodies of water shuffling down through about 100-yard funnel, for lack of a better term. So it gets very swift current.
All right. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 546. Let's proceed to House Bill 679. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. This bill would expand the mandatory licensing requirements for car dealership employees to include employees who sell finance, insurance, and warranty products. Under current law, MVA licenses car dealers and the salespeople who sell vehicles at car dealerships. But there are employees who interact with customers on financing, insurance, and other add-on products. So this bill will require that these other sales employees meet the same licensing criteria as vehicle salespeople, such as getting fingerprinted and getting a background check. And in doing so, and setting up this licensing process or expanding the current licensing process, this would help MVA address any complaints it receives from customers about these add-on products. And the language in the bill is modeled after Virginia's law. Over half of all states require this type of licensing. And here also to speak in support is Travis Smarts, who's with the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Travis, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barbe, members of the committee. I also want to thank Delegate Stein, Delegate Foley, and Delegate Frazier Hidalgo for sponsoring this consumer protection piece of legislation. Maryland was very forward-thinking in 2020 when we became the first state before the legislature ended early to authorize the electronic sale of a vehicle, whereby a consumer could buy a vehicle completely online and have the vehicle delivered to their home without the need to physically go to a dealership location. With that, dealerships in Maryland and across the country, for that matter, enjoyed tremendous success selling vehicles over state lines. However, we've always required salesman's licensing. We've never required finance licensing. And with the advent of internet purchases, what we're seeing is that people are calling a call center and they don't entirely know who they're speaking to. So for example, at the Carvana location in Rockville, they have 7 licensed salespeople. But when you call the Carvana number about a vehicle, you're not entirely sure that you're calling that location. However, that location does in fact sign off on the paperwork and review the paperwork before it goes to the Motor Vehicle Administration. We'd like the same consumer protection avenues for finance. If you're calling a dealership about a particular vehicle, the individual that you speak to about a finance product and insurance product must be regulated by the state of Maryland, must go through a background check, must be fingerprinted, and must go through a 3-year renewal. Half the states in the country do licensing of finance individuals, and we're just asking for the same protections in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this? I don't think nobody else has signed up to testify in favor, and nobody is opposed. Any questions? Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Stein, for this bill. Are you trying to tell us that in order to be a financial representative in the state of Maryland,
I know
that all you need is a business card from Staples that says you are a financial representative? Is that what you're trying to tell us, Delegate Stein?
I don't know if I'm trying to tell you that, but Delegate Holmes, if I can understand how that you might infer that representation, but I would defer to Travis Marks on that. So
I guess if you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? Travis, do you have any response?
You know, interestingly enough, the majority of the franchised new car dealers in the state of Maryland already license their F&I employees. They treat them as salespeople and license them, but it's not mandatory. This is more geared at making sure that our consumers are protected from the larger internet companies that are selling finance products and you have no idea who you're speaking to on the back end. So basically, if you want to purchase a car from a Maryland franchise dealer and you're going to purchase financing through that dealer or an extended warranty, then that dealership must have an employee who's gone through the proper criminal background check procedures.
Thank you.
More than a card from Staples, apparently. Okay, Delegate Clark has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will that include dealerships for, say, motorcycles and RVs and motor vehicles like that, or things that'll be on the road?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Motor Vehicle Administration currently licenses salespeople that work in any dealership capacity that will retail vehicles that are titled. So motorcycles are titled, RVs are titled. Things such as it wouldn't impact like a Bass Pro Shop, maybe that's selling an off-road vehicle, that those individuals aren't required to be licensed as salespeople by the MBA. It's just individuals that work under a physical licensed dealership.
And that wouldn't include boats, would it?
It would not include boats, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsor or the witness? Seeing none, we'll proceed. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 679. We'll proceed to House Bill 710. Delegate Lewis, Jazz Lewis, are you in the House?
In the House, Chairman.
Thanks for
having me. So I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much.
You got
Chair
4 minutes,
Barnett.
by the way.
Thank you. Vice Chair Stein and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I am here to present House Bill 710, the Equitable, Inclusive, Transit-Oriented Development Enhancement Act. With this bill, we will help promote targeted growth and development in the areas of the state with access to transit stations, better leveraging the state's transportation assets and focusing dollars where they'll get put to their best use. Our state has a long history in investing in mass transit and putting funding towards our transit system, which is why we're the 6th largest, we have the 6th highest share of transit commuters across this country, with the Washington, D.C. region being the highest. Though our transit numbers have taken a hard hit through the COVID-19 pandemic, mass transit continues to be an essential way many Marylanders commute to and from work. We've already seen riders returning and starting to emerge from the pandemic, and transit-oriented development will help. Investing in our mass transit infrastructure makes sense economically and environmentally, leveraging the state's dollars to their fullest potential. In 2008, the General Assembly enacted an official transit-oriented development designation process by which the state allows projects within a half-mile radius of a TOD station to be eligible to receive state support to advance transit-oriented development around said station. However, the statute did not work in the incentives necessary to promote development that they wanted. As of January 2022, there are 17 state designated TOD sites throughout the entirety of Maryland. We can create a more inclusive, accessible Maryland by encouraging more development at each of these 17 locations already served in our system. With this legislation, we will leverage the More Job for Marylanders program to provide the same tax credits and benefits to businesses who create new jobs in TOD designated sites as for opportunity zones. incentivizing the creation of jobs in locations accessible to the workers who need them most. This will directly benefit Marylanders who may not have access to a car and thus are cut off from many job opportunities by encouraging businesses to locate at those sites. Further, this bill will create a $10 million transit-oriented development, a capital grant and revolving loan fund that the Maryland Department of Transportation will administer yearly to create competitive grants and loan programs to provide financial assistance to local jurisdictions for planning, construction, or gap funding for public or private development at these sites. For these reasons, I urge a favorable report for the committee for this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to go through all the witnesses in favor of the bill, and then we will entertain questions. So first witness in favor is Larry Casecamp. Larry, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Larry Casecamp, Legislative Director for Smart Transportation Division. Represent railroad workers, including minimum 2-person crews operating MARC and Amtrak commuter services. I'm here in support of House Bill 710. Our organization has been an advocate for upgrading, improving, and expanding MARC service and transit-oriented development for many years. Our members working the trains communicate directly with the traveling public. They hear the complaints about the commutes, parking issues, problems accessing transit, and the need for modernization and expansion of the systems. Seems the number one issue on a single subject matter by the legislature is climate change and the environment. A successful transit system is good for the environment, and transit-oriented development is good for a transit system. Thousands of automobiles on the roadways every day result in high emissions of greenhouse gases. And the number one complaint from the traveling public is roadway congestion. Transit-oriented development will help alleviate these problems by reducing the number of automobiles on the road, which in turn reduces traffic congestion and pollution. Transit-oriented development also improves the business climate as it expands the pool of employees while expanding public access to businesses who see the benefit of locating in these areas. With the investment the federal government has signaled for rail transit, there's no better time than now to move forward with the investments to modernize and expand rail commuter systems, including transit-oriented development, which makes way more sense than building more roads and parking lots. Virginia's recognized the benefits of transit-oriented development and modernizing and expanding rail system in their state, and it's time for Maryland to get on board. Our organization's in strong support of House Bill 710. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn to Kevin Canali with MACO. Kevin, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, members of the committee. Kevin Canali here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in strong support of this bill. I won't belabor what you've already heard. I think that the delegate did a great job explaining the bill. I will say from a county government perspective, we think that this bill can absolutely encourage economic development, reduce sprawl, and incentivize environmental stewardship. I think the revolving loan fund has a lot of flexibility to help local governments expand this program, expand transit-oriented development. And we're very hopeful that this is also going to enable some of our rural areas to get into the game. So we think this revolving loan fund is going to help. It probably is the final piece to the puzzle to really get this program going. And we'd ask for a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Cheryl Court. Cheryl, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Court. I'm the policy director for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We are the leading nonprofit organization in the DC region, including suburban Maryland, advocating for walkable, bikeable, inclusive, transit-oriented communities as the most sustainable and equitable way for the DC region to grow and provide opportunities for all. We wish to express our support for HB 710. We commend the bill for recognizing the special challenges and importance of providing financial assistance to small businesses and investments in transit-oriented development. We support the bill's intention to boost jobs and investments by creating thriving walkable transit station areas. By locating more jobs, services, and homes around transit stations, Maryland can reduce its carbon footprint and grow it while it grows its economy. We recommend prioritizing walk, bike, and bus connections for access to and around transit stations while minimizing the management of vehicle parking, and suggest that we look at better market pricing for vehicle parking as an important part of effective management. We have some suggestions for some minor tweaks to the legislation, but we just want to express our overall enthusiasm and support for this bill and ask the committee to give it a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are joined by 3 members of the Ways and Means Committee, Delegates Polakovich, Carr, Feldmark, and Buckle. And I believe the first question is going to go to our friend from one of our friends from Ways and Means, Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to be here. And I just had a question. You know, More Jobs for Marylanders, the tax credit program typically comes to our committee on Ways and Means. We spent a lot of time on the bill in 2017 and some revisions to it over the years. So I'm just trying to understand this. Maybe Delegate Lewis might be in the best position. Your bill, I mean, it's got a bunch of different components. Number one, it would extend More Jobs for Marylanders as is. And then in addition, add the TOD areas to the eligibility criteria for More Jobs for Marylanders. Is that a fair way to say it? That's one element of it, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that, I'm sorry, was that a yes?
That was a yes.
Okay.
And so does adding the TOD areas to the More Jobs for Marylanders credit program, do you have any idea like how that would affect the awarding of the credits to the already eligible jurisdictions or projects? Because we have certain caps that are put on More Jobs for Marylanders. And my only concern is, as much as I appreciate trying to do transit-oriented development, Mr. Casey Camp is my constituent. I mean, he lives in Allegheny County. We'd like to have additional things there. My concern is that More Jobs for Marylanders was started with an eye towards enhancing manufacturing jobs and other types of jobs in what we call the Tier 1 areas, which includes Prince George's County and Baltimore City. But outside of Prince George's and Baltimore City is largely more rural and economically disadvantaged communities. We tried to lump in the urban economically disadvantaged counties by statistics and the non-urban economically disadvantaged counties by statistics. Expanding the program to TODs would expand it, I assume, to a lot of areas in Montgomery County, Howard County, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County. And I'm asking, I guess, are you planning on increasing the amount of money that we can use for the credits, or is it just more people competing for the same pool?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing I would say that the 17 sites are located across the state. So not just in Prince George's and Montgomery, include Aberdeen, for example, is included in the 17 sites, for example. It is just extending it, so we're not affecting, any level of tax credits that is in the jurisdiction of yours within Ways and Means. You all, the committee will do as it sees fit there. But we understand that our goal is to have a all options on the table approach to particularly reinvesting a lot of these communities that have lacked investment for a long time. I mean, we did our press conference yesterday at New Carrollton, which fortunately, no amount of headquarters is moving over there. But for a long time, a lot of these communities have lacked investment. So we're hoping to extend that to them.
And then if I can just briefly, Mr. Chairman, the follow-up is there's a second part of the bill, at least the way I understand it, or maybe there's more parts, but a second primary part that creates this mandated $10 million TOD capital grant and revolving loan fund. Mm-hmm. That's completely separate from the More Jobs for Marylanders credit program. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And so there'd be 10 million in that. I think there's usually 9 million. Maybe it's 10 million. I think it's 9 million in the general tax credits for More Jobs for Marylanders, and 1 million for there's a sales tax credit that if you build a new facility, you get to write off your 6% sales taxes if you buy the machinery or the equipment or the construction materials in Maryland. So it adds up to, I think, $10 million for More Jobs for Marylanders most years. And we've capped that. And then the TOD brand would be the same size as the entire More Jobs for Marylanders program, if they're both 10 million, if I'm getting it right. Which, trust me, Delegate Lewis, I may not be getting it right, but at least that's my recollection.
But I also want to clarify. So those credits are, that's on the private side for people who have capital gains and they're looking for a place to invest their resources. The lion's share of this $10 million revolving fund is going to go to local jurisdictions for infrastructure improvement, planning, that type of thing on the part of the jurisdictions. It will also go to those jurisdictions if they want to leverage it for, let's say, gap funding on a project, but primarily it will be planning and infrastructure improvements on one part of their local jurisdictions.
Thank you for the answers. That helps me to understand it better. I appreciate it.
Okay, are there any other questions for the sponsor or any of the witnesses? The one person who signed up in opposition does not wish to testify. So, well, that, I guess, ends the public hearing on House Bill 710. We will proceed, therefore, to House Bill 726. Delegate Ebersol.
Mr. Chairman Barve, what a pleasure to see you and the rest of the committee today.
Yeah.
I bring before you yet another bill that I hope you'll just love as much as you've loved the others. Mobility is a program provided by MDOT and by the Maryland Department of Transportation. It's a specialized transit service available to people who, because of a disability, are functionally unable to get to a bus stop. They have to wait. They can't wait unassisted at a stop or station, or they can't board or ride a bus by themselves. And mobility is available within certain distances of local link routes in Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, and Baltimore counties. And so I had a number of complaints from people who are having difficulty getting on board and being able to actually ride it. There were tremendous long waits. And so we called in the people who do mobility, and they were very, very conversational with us, but solutions were hard to find. They have landed on what I consider to be a partial solution. It's a nuanced solution. And I think Holly Arnold is in the waiting room or here. I hope she's online with us, because I am going to give a quick description and then I'm going to defer to her to explain the differences. I imagine there'll be a few questions on it. Basically, it vaguely alters the background screening and the screening requirements so that transportation network companies, often known as Uber and Lyft, as two examples, can help to provide services. This will increase their ability to provide services significantly. They still have significant vetting procedures. It involves an alteration in the background checks. They assure me that there's virtually no difference, but the difference is in their negotiations with these companies and their ability to reach out and work with us in those situations. And with that, I will defer to, if you don't, I think it's better to let Holly talk first before we ask questions.
Sure. Holly, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon.
There you
thanks,
go.
Thanks, Chairman Barbe, members of the committee, for allowing me to be here today. For the record, I'm Holly Arnold, the administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration, and I would like to thank Delegate Ebersol for taking the lead on this important legislation. I'm here today in strong support of House Bill 726, as it will allow MTA to improve our mobility paratransit service in an innovative way. As you know, MTA provides mobility paratransit service within 3/4 of a mile of our fixed route service for people with disabilities. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and for a variety of reasons, many of our mobility operators left employment with the current contractors. And as our region continues to recover from the pandemic, more people are traveling and demand for mobility rides has significantly increased, which has led to a shortage of available mobility operators. We have investigated several ways to increase and improve our mobility service, and we believe that contracting with TNCs is one effective and immediate way to accomplish this. Our industry peers, including WMATA here in the state of Maryland, have successfully partnered with TNCs. Our TNC program will operate very similarly to the current Call-A-Ride program. It would be an optional and supplemental program that customers would need to opt into, and there would be no change to the way that customers access the traditional existing mobility services. In our initial discussions with major TNCs in the region, such as Uber and Lyft, they conveyed that the current fingerprinting requirement will be a barrier to any contractual agreement with MTA. It's important to note that this fingerprinting requirement is specific to MTA and our contractors. And for reference, WMATA does not impose a fingerprinting requirement and is currently operating this service in the state of Maryland. Passing House Bill 726 would allow MTA to contract with TNCs and also provide this service in the state. Currently, all TNC drivers in the state of Maryland are required by the Public Service Commission to undergo accredited criminal history checks yearly. And as an added layer of protection, this bill codifies those regulations and allows MTA to adopt more stringent standards if needed. So in closing, the operator shortage that currently exists threatens the vital service that mobility provides. This House bill will directly address this problem and allow MTA to offer a new innovative service that will keep our customers safe and on the move. So it's for those reasons, I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable vote, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, only one person has signed up in opposition. They don't want to testify, so we'll go straight to questions. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this bill, Delegate Ebersol. I was just curious, because I'm not familiar with the program. Would this be similar or very much alike or the same as the Metro Access program in the DC suburbs? Are you familiar with that, Ms. Arnold?
I am familiar. Yes, it would be very similar to how they use that service. So similar to our call a ride service, customers opt into it. They choose to use it. They would use the app on their phone, similar to how anyone else would call an Uber and a Lyft. They would be able to see what the expected cost of that ride is, and then we would cover. They would pay for the first $3. We cover up to $40, and so anything above that they would cover.
Okay, so do riders have to qualify to ride it? Do they have to be approved the way they do Metro Access through a doctor saying, you know, this person is in fact not able to drive for whatever variety of medical, physical, other reasons?
Yes, this program is only open to our mobility riders.
And so then my last question is, in terms of your statement about codifying regulations, is there any way that now Metro Access does operate in the District of Columbia and in Virginia, Northern Virginia as well, but would there be any way, and I'm not saying maybe in this bill, but do you see any way to combine the regulations you're talking about in terms of codifying them for the WMATA service in the state of Maryland? Is that something that maybe could be looked at or would be feasible? Or is that too complicated?
So I know that WMATA, when using TNCs, they do use the Public Service Commission regulations, which is what we're proposing here. So it just includes that in the regulations.
Okay.
This bill is specific to MTA.
Right.
So we're just changing that piece of it.
Okay, I'd be interested to talking to you offline about that possibility.
Yeah, we're happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's such a good idea, Delegate. Thank you that you went.
Yeah, I get a lot of complaints about the Metro Access service. I
think
won't
we
go
all
into now.
experienced that, and it's a handful of delegates from Baltimore County that we kind of came together in delegation and talked to them about it. So that's why you see such wonderful people from Baltimore County as co-sponsors.
Yeah, well, no need to reinvent the wheel. So I like the idea, and I hope to pursue it offline. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Delegate Ferraza has the next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and sorry for laughing about the dog, because I just always have a dog or something making noise in the background. So I love dogs. So thank you, Delegate Ebersol, for bringing this bill. I think it is filling a very important gap in service for folks. I've certainly heard complaints for years of people being left, missing rides to work, being left on the side of the road, et cetera. But I'm trying to get a better understanding of how the background checks work here. And I apologize, I missed Delegate Ebersol's testimony, so it may have been covered there. But are you relying on the, I guess this is for Ms. Arnold, are we relying on Uber and Lyft and their background checks? Are we just lifting the fingerprinting? How is that working?
Yeah, so current state law requires that any contractor that works with MTA to provide service for people with disabilities has to go through the specific fingerprinting background check. The Public Service Commission, when they allowed Uber and Lyft to operate in the state, do include a pretty extensive background check as part of their requirement. So the TNCs have to rerun background checks on all drivers annually. The providers that they use must be audited and accredited by the Background Screening Credentialing Council of the National Association of Professional Background Screeners. If they want to use any different one, they have to notify the commission within 60 days. The TNC has to provide written certification to the commission with the new drivers. The drivers are required to report arrests and convictions within 3 days, and then they have to report that to the commission and promptly deactivate it. As part of the background check, they have to look through the entire adult history of its applicants for convictions in Maryland and where possible convictions in other jurisdictions. And then the commission can order the TNCs to revisit a background check of any driver at any point that they want.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So, but just to clarify, they're not going through additional screening here. This is just what every other Uber and Lyft driver would be going through.
Correct, yes.
And because I guess I'm just a little concerned about the safety record of both Uber and Lyft. Well, I have two concerns. I have concerns about that. And I'm wondering if there's any, I guess you said it might be difficult for them to do the fingerprinting and the additional background check. Is that not possible to do along with, because I applaud this as like a really, well, I have additional concerns about this, which I'll tell you in a minute, but I applaud it as an effort to solve this really important problem. But is there not a way to work with them, whether or not they find it difficult or not, but is there not a way to do it? Do additional
I mean, they've indicated they won't enter into a contract with
They won't enter into a contract. Okay. And then I guess the other question I had, which is sort of the other side of this, is what steps have you taken to increase the drive, getting more drivers and working with the union to do that? And because, I mean, this has been a chronic problem. I understand from my Baltimore County friends that there's been sort of, and also from you and from what I've heard lately, that this has become even more of an extreme problem lately, but it has been a problem for years in the disability community. So I'm wondering, what are the other efforts being made?
Yeah. Holly, before you go, I just want to say the problem has certainly become more acute.
Yeah.
And with all the employment difficulties that exist in all areas, mobility is experiencing that significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
And it impacts their ability, people with disabilities, ability to get to work, obviously. Yeah, definitely.
Or to the doctor, or to a number of very important places.
Right, absolutely. That's why I'm glad you're doing something to solve this.
Yeah, so let me address that. Before I do, I just wanted to note that this is entirely an opt-in program. So in terms of worrying about, if folks are worried about safety and security, they don't have to use this service. They can use the traditional mobility service where we do have the fingerprinting background checks. So this is something people can choose to use. Regarding the traditional service and our efforts to get additional drivers, we have been working incredibly diligently over the past several months to increase that operator pool. We've done 2 separate wage increases for the contractors that we use. So we started out at $16 an hour in summer of last year. In October 1st, we raised that to $18 an hour for all the new operators and the ones who are already there, which did have a pretty immediate increase in the on-time performance as operators were more willing to do overtime and did show up for work. We are continuing to push forward. We went to the Board of Public Works yesterday for an award of 3 new contracts. So we currently have 2. We're going to go back to 3. I think we've learned that our service is just a little too big for 2. One of those, the new one that we're bringing on, has 40 operators that are in training as we speak, and we're working to bring them on board as quickly as we can. One of our existing contractors also worked with us and brought on a subcontractor called Userve, which is a TNC-like service. So they use kind of the gig economy drivers who can choose to work when and where they want to work. And we're providing about 175 rides with that each day. So we're continuing to just look and see what we can do to increase that. I think the new contracts that have wage increases built in and additional incentives built in will make a big difference.
Okay, I really appreciate that. I would love to, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'd love to have more conversation with you about this offline. And I really appreciate you bringing this, Delegate Ebersol.
Yeah, Delegate Terraza, I appreciate our conversations offline. And I think you have some good ideas too.
Next question goes to Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I echo Delegate Terraza's gratitude to you, Delegate Ebersol, for bringing this bill to try to solve a problem that's obviously out there that needs to be addressed. My question for Ms. Arnold is, as I understand this, This would be any Uber or Lyft driver who is out there. So if I wanted to go, like, if I'm not a disabled person and not eligible for this program, I would have this, it would be the same list that I would have access to. There's no special list or approved list from MTA for these drivers, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Holly, wouldn't it be correct, though, that the driver would know that they were servicing someone who had difficulty with accessing vehicles and things like that?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, we don't want to have
we wouldn't have a surprise driver reluctant to pick someone up.
Correct.
So how would they know that if there isn't a special list of these drivers? Like, how would they know that?
You wouldn't get patched through.
They would know it from the request, or how would they know it?
So the riders will be certified and have the options to use TNCs for their trips. And so it'll be part of the certification that we have with them. We talked with Uber and Lyft, and they don't really want to create a separate pool, and we don't want to create a separate pool of operators because we want our mobility riders to have the full range of options that everyone else has. And so we want to ensure that if they want to use this service, they don't have to wait an extra period of time for a specially trained operator to show up. We want anyone who's available to be able to come and give them that ride.
Well, so how do I know? So we're all competing for the same drivers is, I guess, what I'm getting at, right? So whether I, as an able-bodied person, want to go to the shopping center or a disabled person wants to go, we're all competing for the same drivers. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, okay, thank you.
Okay, it appears that Delegate Boyce has a question.
Thank you so much. And to piggyback off of Delegate Foley's question, isn't it so in that the competition for more rides between someone who may be disabled or not would potentially increase the capacity for these businesses to have more, to encourage probably more people to be on the road to provide the service?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Delegate Boyce. I think you're right. And I think relevant to some of the other questions about some of the concerns, this is a step forward. This isn't being hailed as an absolute solution to the problem. And I appreciate your question. If we got more drivers, it would become an even bigger step forward. And, that old phrase about perfect being the enemy of the good here, I think applies in this case.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for this because about 4 years ago, I was in my community and I stopped because there was a woman who just came from the hospital and she was a little disoriented. She still had her gown and had no way to getting home. And I ordered her my personal Uber to get her home. Now, I know through the Uber that she made it, but wouldn't it have been nice if she could have called her own Uber at a service like this? So thank you for this so much.
Thank you, Delegate.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsor or the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 726. Let's proceed to the last bill of the afternoon, House Bill 713, Delegate Lehman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for saving the best for last. I am happy to be here. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and my esteemed colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, asking a favorable report on House Bill 713, requiring helmets for equestrians under the age of 18 who are riding on public trails and other public property. The bill requires an adult who is present and directly supervising a minor to ensure the youth rider is wearing a properly fitted, secured helmet that meets national headgear safety standards. Failure to meet the requirement would result in a written warning the first time, $50 the second time, and $100 for third and subsequent violations. Equestrian injuries are primarily the result of a fall, and falling from a horse is actually not an uncommon occurrence. So the goal of this bill is to protect young equestrians from getting a concussion or other serious brain or head injury by requiring them to wear a helmet when riding on public land. The last several years, you're probably aware, there's been a substantial increase in discussions all around concussion safety in various sports. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention defines a concussion as a brain injury caused by a bump or a blow to the head that can change the way the brain normally works. And even what seems at the time to be a mild bump on the head can actually turn out to be very serious. So there is actually no concussion-proof helmet, an equestrian helmet that meets or exceeds the standards of the American Society of Testing and Materials for protective headgear used in equestrian riding will nevertheless help minor riders. HB 713 only applies to minors riding horses on highways, public riding paths, or other public property. It does not apply to youth who are practicing for or competing in events where helmets are not normally worn, and for those who are engaged in agricultural activities, for all my friends from rural areas. While an adult present and directly supervising a minor could be charged with a violation, it's the minor rider who will be given educational materials describing this law and the benefits of wearing a helmet. And again, the goal is to prevent subsequent violations. The use of an appropriate equestrian helmet should be as commonplace as the use of seatbelts, or like laws that require kids to wear bike helmets or sit in booster seats in the rear of a car to safeguard them in automobile accidents. HB 713 will help safeguard young equestrians from head trauma as a result of a fall. Delegate Love shared with us recently the important role equine-related activities play in our state's economy. I believe that if we so value these activities for social, cultural, and economic reasons, that I think the safety of our youngest riders should be everyone's concern. I am grateful to the advocates who are here to support the bill, including a young rider from Charles County who just rushed home from her last high school class. It is her first time testifying, and she's very excited to be here. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I urge the committee's favorable report.
I have to say, I'm a little surprised it's not already the law.
I am too, actually. I know there are laws in the state of Florida and the state of New York. I'm not sure elsewhere, but I am surprised too, given hearkening back to Delegate Love's emphasis and interest in equine activities, and given the history in this state that we do not have a law in the books.
Okay. Corinne Marie Polquin, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for your time today. My name is Corinne Marie Polquin. I am testifying in support of House Bill 713 on behalf of the Maryland Horse Council. I am co-president of the Maryland Horse Council, but I also own and operate a lesson barn in Montgomery County in Brookville, Maryland. We have over 30 horses, ponies, mules, and donkeys, and offer riding lessons and camp. You know, as Delegate Lehman has already testified, there's a lot of data regarding safety associated with helmet use, and we endorse all those safety statistics that support helmet use. As a riding instructor, I require helmets of all my students. We ride on our property, but we also trail ride on county and state land. We actually have a pathway through Rachel Carson up into the Patuxent. And surprisingly, I sometimes get pushback from parents and children not wanting to wear helmets. I mean, it's going to mess up my hair. I'm going to have helmet head. It'll give me a headache, you know, whatever, you know, that usually is only when you have an ill-fitting helmet. But in any case, I'm sometimes surprised that I get pushback, and I'll just say, well, this is my rule. And sometimes folks will say, well, I'll just go somewhere else. You know, I'll go ride someplace else, or I'll sign an additional release. You know, it'd be great if I could just say, hey, it's the law, period, done, fine, you know, we're done. The discussion is over. So we support, the Maryland Horse Council supports this bill, and we encourage its favorable report. Thank you.
Okay. Evelyn Salmon, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Barbe, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the committee. My name is Evelyn Salmon, and I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 713. I'm 10 years old and a member of Waradaka Pony Club in Montgomery County. I have a horse named Simba, and I've been riding most of my life. My grandma even bought me a horse before I was born. I think passing this bill is important because helmets keep your head safe so you don't damage or badly injure your head during a fall. And the use United States Pony Club manual even says helmets must be worn with chin straps fastened and properly fitted whenever you're on a horse or pony. Lastly, Maryland already requires kids to wear bicycle helmets when biking on public roadways that are used by cars and people walking. So it makes sense if you are riding a horse, you should wear a helmet too. Thank you very much for your time, and I respectfully request a favorable committee report on this bill.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we'll turn to Barbara Saulner-Webb. Barbara, if you're out there, welcome. You have 2 minutes. Apparently not. Okay, how about Rob Burke?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, are you Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, you're on.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I'm actually on my horse wearing a helmet.
Ah.
So I'm Barbara Saulner-Webb, 17200 Melbourne Drive, Laurel. Lifetime Maryland resident, owner of a small farm, who loves to enjoy Maryland's beautiful green areas and trail riding on my sweet horses. That's him. I'm also a longtime active member of Trail Riders of Today, or TROT, a 42-year-old nonprofit organized in Maryland that is dedicated to advancing equestrian trail riding trails and open spaces. And today I'm speaking for TROT's well over 200 Maryland members to convey that we strongly support HB 713. Its important legislation seems a brilliant public health initiative. Almost every equestrian has had or knows someone who has had one of these, quote, freak accidents, where possible serious brain injury was averted or at least minimized due to the rider wearing a helmet. I personally would likely have been permanently impaired if it had not been for the protection of my helmet from a very bad horse accident ages ago. For decades, TROT has required that helmets be worn by everyone who participates in TROT-sponsored trail rides or other mounted events. TROT has also encouraged all members to wear a helmet whenever they ride and to urge their family and friends to wear them too, and especially minors. A recent UConn animal science study showed that helmets reduce the possibility of deaths from brain injury by 70 to 80%. And indeed, a recent TROT membership survey affirmed that our members strongly favor helmets required for all riders, with well over 90% membership support for requiring minors to wear helmets when riding. Now, parenthetically, while TROT strongly supports legislation requiring helmets for all minors riding on public lands, and would be pleased if it also applied to riding on private lands, we fear some individuals may resist a requirement for private lands. So it would be more comfortable if HB 713 clarified with an amendment to add the word public to the phrase a horse riding path in part C212. So in summary, to help protect Maryland's youth from suffering serious brain injury when riding horses on public lands, please pass HB 713.
Thank you very much. What's your horse's name?
Mr. Thor.
Okay, Mr. Thor, great.
He's an Icelandic and he's a sweetheart.
Okay.
I don't think he's ever been ridden by somebody who doesn't have a helmet on.
Oh, well, there's testimony for you. Rob Burke. Rob, are you with us? Apparently not. How about Kayla Mason? Kayla?
Hi.
Hi, Kayla. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kayla Mason. I'm a freshman in high school and I have been riding horses for the last 3 years. I love it and I participate in competitions, and riding horses is very common to me. Riding horses requires you to be in full control of your body because everything you do from your head, hands, and feet are guiding the horse. This requires my absolute full concentration. But sometimes the horse just does what the horse wants to do. There are days when my horse Dixie does not want to listen. Horses also get scared. When I ride horses, my instructor requires that my helmet is on before I put the bridle on the horse. This is a strict policy. But honestly, I would not even get near a horse without my helmet. And here's why. At my first competition, one of the more advanced riders was on a course trotting around the obstacles, and at the very end, the rider had to get the horse to jump over a gate, which was a couple inches high. When the horse jumped over the gate, the front hooves clipped the gate and would scoop the horse, and the rider bounced on the horse and was thrown from the horse face forward. Again, this was an advanced rider who was comfortable jumping obstacles. No matter how confident or comfortable you may be while in riding horses, things happen, just like wearing a seatbelt while in your car. You may be an experienced driver, but accidents still happen. Seatbelts save lives. Head injury and trauma can have lasting impacts, whether it's frequent headaches, concussion, or long-term memory problems. Helmets save lives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Mary Lehman, and members of the committee.
Well, thank you very much. And finally, Catherine Mello. Catherine, are you with us? Is Catherine with us?
Hi, yep, I am.
Okay. I can't see you. I can hear you.
All right, I'm trying to get my camera on, which does not seem to be working, so I will go ahead.
Okay, go. Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, Delegate Barbe, Delegate Stein, and members of the Transportation and Environment Committee. My name is Catherine Reinhardt Mello, and I am supporting House Bill 713 on behalf of the Brain Injury Association of Maryland. We are a 39-year-old organization that was started by family members and survivors of brain injury. And our mission is to educate, to advocate, and then to partner in research for people with brain injury. There are an estimated 120,000 Maryland families currently living with the devastating effects of brain injury. And our organization supports policies that prevent brain injuries or reduce the severity of brain injuries among Marylanders. The symptoms and the long-term impacts of a brain injury vary based on the parts of the brain injured, severity of the injury, and the age of development of each child. A person's brain is not fully developed until they are in their mid-20s, and the full impact of their brain injury may not be evident during childhood until they're asked to do more complex tasks that may be social, cognitive, and academic expectations are raised as they age and go into adulthood. A brain injury in childhood can have lasting effects and consequences for both the child and their family, including in areas of education, employment, and social relationships. So about my background noise. There are no concussion-proof helmets, but research shows that equestrian helmets do reduce the severity of traumatic brain injury and the likelihood that a person will sustain a skull fracture. Unhelmeted riders are more likely to have skull fractures and intracranial bleeding than those who are wearing helmets when they sustained their injuries. The American Medical Equestrian Association calculates that ASTEM approved helmets have reduced all riding related head injuries by around 30% and severe injuries by 50%. Based on the data that we acquired from the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services system, about 28% of minors.
If you could start to wind up your testimony, the committee would appreciate that.
I am just about done. 28% of minors that had a TBI as a result of a fall from equestrian sports were not wearing a helmet during the incident. Requiring supervising adults to ensure that children are wearing well-fitting helmets approved by the American Society of Testing and Materials gives them the best chance to minimize their injury should the unexpected occur. No matter how experienced as
if you could start to wind up, we do have questions.
Okay, we do ask you for a favorable report for House Bill 713.
Okay, and let me ask again if Rob Burke is with us. Okay, he's not, so we'll proceed to questions. The first question goes to Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for a little personal story, I had a Shetland pony when I was younger named Smokey. And one day I got on him bareback and he didn't appreciate it. And I took the leap, and I wish I had a helmet on that day, but anyhow.
So that explains everything.
That explains some of the story. That's what I'm getting at, Mr. Chairman. But I did want to address the enforcement side of this a little bit. I'm just questioning it. So is this complaint driven, or is this like officers are going to be patrolling for this? I mean, what do you envision in, I see where it says first is written, and then it first or second offense is 100, third offense or 50, and then 100. So is this complaint driven, or is this additional police duties? I'm just not sure.
Delegate Jacobs, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for the question. It's a good one. I envision it as being primarily one, it could be complaint driven, first of all, but I would envision it more as being one in which a rider or a group of riders is out on public land in a park or riding along a roadway. And that jurisdiction's police, most often I think it's going to be park police, state or county or local park police that would, if they came across a group of riders and there are, minors, obviously children, some, 16, 17, 18-ish might be hard to tell at a glance, but younger children, it would be obvious if they are not wearing helmets. And the first time is this written warning I talked about, because if you can envision a situation where you might have a leader, let's say a scout leader, or a 4-H group leader, or a church group leader, that is not necessarily the parent of those riders. And you want the parent to be aware, someone who is not present to be aware, this is now a law, and your minor child the next time out needs to wear a helmet. And so there would be educational material given specifically to the rider. And of course, the adult supervising would be made aware of the law as well. And a second time around it would have to involve that same rider and or adult, maybe in a different combination, maybe it's a smaller group. The next time there could be a $50 fine, and the third time and subsequent times there would be a $100 fine. But the goal is more around compliance, around conveying that this is a very serious safety issue and that helmets are needed for that reason, to prevent head injuries, not so much to be punitive.
Okay, and my last question is, it talks about providing educational materials with an individual that is, I guess, subject to the violation. That's under paragraph 7 on page 3. Would the police have to be carrying this educational material all the time, or is it provided later? Or, I'm thinking of just the burden of is every police officer going to have to carry educational materials, or I'm not sure how that's going to be implemented.
That is a good question. It is not specified in the bill. I would guess in the case of park police in places where you have horse equestrian activities, riding more often, that they would be carrying it because they're more likely to come across riders in state or local parks, whereas police who maybe see riders along a highway. And in the fiscal note, it does address the fact that there are some laws around riding on highways that actually, except in 3 counties, Charles, St. Mary's, and Worcester, people are not allowed to ride animals or drive animal-driven vehicles. And I'm not sure if that's a reference to Amish populations, but they're not allowed to ride them on divided highways where the speed limit is more than 35 miles an hour. So I don't imagine all police would be carrying this material with them. I would think there'd be, an awareness and a need in some areas more than others for police to have the actual educational materials handy. If they don't have it, I'm sure there would be a system of follow-up.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. It is a very good one.
Delegate Boyce.
Sorry. So thank you so much, Delegate Lehman, for this bill. But if I can engage Kayla and Amy publicly to say thank you for coming to testify. Thank you for being an advocate. Thank you for being a part of the process, and hope if this is not your first time, that this will certainly not be your last. And I wanted to actually ask you a question about helmets. Do you see a lot of your peers wearing helmets or not wearing helmets?
Yeah, I see a lot of my pony clubbers wearing helmets in the arena and outside jumping.
Awesome. Kayla?
A lot of my peers wear their helmets as soon as they walk into the doors. So yeah.
Oh, so you guys are following the law. You're just being here to set a good example for everybody else.
That's right. That's what they're doing.
Good job. Thanks.
Any further questions for the sponsor or any of the witnesses? Well, seeing none, that ends the public hearing on House Bill 713. It also ends the public hearing for today. Announcements. Anybody have announcements?
I do. I'm sorry.
Ann.
Yeah, the local government subcommittee will have a very brief one bill meeting at in 10 minutes at 20 after 3.
Okay. Who else? Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Healy, when do you think you'll be finished?
By 3:30 at the latest.
Okay, then motor vehicle will meet at 3:30. You think you can make it by 3:30 or should we do 3:45?
Sure. Yep. That's fine.
Okay, 3:30 motor vehicle will meet at 3:30.
Who else? Any other subcommittee chairs? Nope. Vice chair? Nope. Okay, in that case, is there anybody else who has an announcement for the good of the order? Seeing none, good public hearing. I will see you all tomorrow.